Hello and welcome back. So, recently I put a poll on my community page on my YouTube, and one of the winners, not really a winner, but one of the highest voted ones, was slow shutter sports photography. So, what I mean by that is using a slower shutter and following the athlete as they run across or dribble across the frame. And if you follow them with the correct shutter speed and the correct settings, you can keep the athlete sharp while the background is slightly blurred, and not like a depth of field blur, but like a motion blur. So you can see that action in the athlete as they run past or dribble past you. You could do this in any sport that they're running back and forth in. You could do it track, baseball, basketball, really anything. I mean, you could do it at the park with your kid running across the playground. So the tricky part is figuring out your settings. So what I usually do is I usually start at 1/50th of a second and then adjust my f-stop and my ISO to get the proper exposure. And then I just start shooting as they're coming towards me and just keep shooting as they go past me and try to follow them the best and as steady as I can until I find one. And what I mean by one, when you find a shutter speed that is proper to keep them sharp as you're panning with them. So it's going to take a little bit of trial and error to figure out how fast they are moving to get the proper sharpness. Because if your shutter speed's too sharp, no matter how good you're panning with them, it's still going to be a little blurry if your shutter speed is too slow. So I usually start at 1/50th and go 1/60th and just kind of work up from there. It's going to depend on how fast the athlete is, how fast pace of play is. So usually with track, say I'm covering for Pitt State like I normally do, I will usually on the first or second heat, if there's a couple heats before Pitt State athletes go, I usually will try to figure out my speed, because say it's like a long run, like an 800, they're going to be running at a decent pace for the first couple laps. They're not going to really change their speed that much. So you can try it out on the first, the second, and they're all kind of running in a pack in the first and second lap. So it's a good time to try to figure out your settings, because by the time they come back around on the third lap, they're going to be pretty close to that same speed, if not maybe a little faster. So if you can figure out your settings on the first couple laps and then get it, then you can hopefully get something sharp and usable to throw into Lightroom or Photoshop, however you edit your photos, and see if you got it sharp enough. You can always, zoom in onto your camera screen if it's touchscreen, or if you have a little scroll wheel to zoom in to see if it's sharp, at least sharp enough for what it is. You can also do this in other ways, but panning with them is the funnest way for me to try it out in. There's also some fun shots that you can do where you could pre-focus on, say, the bench, like in a basketball game. You could pre-focus there, put your lens in manual focus mode, and then you can go to a slower shutter speed, and then as the players are crossing back down the court in front of you, you could be shooting the bench, and you can get, say, the coach sharp as the players are blurring past the screen. So that's another way to use slow shutter to emphasize the action of the game or the action that is happening in front of you. And a lot of these tips don't even have to be sport specific. That's just where I use it the most. I also use this technique when I'm taking photos of business fronts for my full-time job for the city. So I will go find an angle where I can see the storefront. I will usually be across the street, and as cars pass by, I will take that slower shutter speed, and the cars will be blurry, so it adds some action to the storefront photo. Sometimes you can use this to cover up a trash can that's on the sidewalk in front of the business. If you get the car blurring in action in front of that trash can, you can kind of clean up the storefront a little bit if there's some trash on the ground or whatever, using the cars. And you can even do this with people as people walk in to a storefront or a restaurant, or just walking by. You can find a good shutter speed to get some action motion in that photo. So you can use this in many different ways, and it's just a fun thing to get creative, so you're not when you're shooting sports every week or every weekend, you need to find a way to kind of change things up. And this is one way to do it. And one way you can kind of change it up pretty often in any sport that you're covering is just trying out some slower shutter speeds and panning with the athlete. So if you have any questions, just put them down in the comments below. You can find me on Instagram at Gorilla Photog. If you have any questions and you don't want to put it on YouTube, you can DM me on Instagram. And that's it. So I'd appreciate if you'd like, subscribe, and I will see you all next time.